Howdy y'all, and welcome back to my second video in this two-part series, Decks Build You. As a reminder, I was building a set of Corp and Runner decks, and by the time I got around to play them, I realized that the Russian national champion, Sergey, had published his winning deck list on Netrunner DB, and they turned out to have the exact same ideas as those two lists that I've built. So today I'll be sharing the Corp side, and the backstory of the Corp side deck starts like this. I was looking to build a Glacier deck that fits post-core 2 post-rotation, and well, so long, our most reliable clutch card in Glacier card in Caprice Nisei is now history. What other good defensive upgrades can fulfill her role? I kept searching, and then I stumbled upon this, Mambat City Grid. I used to shake it off when it was released. If you remember, this was released in the Mambat cycle after the release of Marcus Betti and Caprice Nisei. I was like, well, this is a decent upgrade, but it doesn't hold a torch to, or hold a candle rather, to what Betti and Caprice can do. It's the 7th, 8th, and 9th best defensive upgrade in Jinteki. Why would you play Mambat City Grid over Caprice and Betti? Well, that used to be the case, but now that Caprice is gone, Mambat City Grid now moves up the ladder and is now on the viable hit list. So I started trying to make a deck around it. So I asked myself, what combos with Mambat City Grid? Well, of course, it's the on-encounter ice. The Grail Ice in particular, as well as Komainu, which happens to be in the same faction as Mambat City Grid. For those of you who are unaware of the interaction between on-encounter ice and Mambat City Grid, here's how they work. Because Mambat City Grid states that because the ice state that the gaining of subroutines persists until the end of the run, until the remainder of the run. This leads to some interesting interactions with Mambat City Grid. Say the run is running on your 3 deep server, remote server, and you res your outermost Galahad, and then do the standard Grail review showing 2 more Grail Ice from your hand. Now it has 3 subroutines. That's fine, the runner breaks them. And then, as the runner passes your outer Galahad, you choose to swap it with your second piece of ice. Now, if the runner continues on to encounter this same Galahad, it retains its 2 subroutines that it gained earlier because it's still the same run, and triggers the on-encounter effect once again, gaining another 2 subroutines. It can be the same 2 Grail Ice from your hand, the 2 Galahads. This repeats, and by the time the runner reaches the third, or rather encounters your Galahad the third time, boy, that's a very taxing ice, 7 subroutines. Now imagine you have a Nisei counter to top that off. So yes, you can see how incredibly taxing Mambat City Grid can get when everything is set up right. And this is the combo we are looking to abuse today. Mambat City Grid also combos with taxing ice that don't have on-encounter effects. And again, in faction, we have DNA Tracker and Chiashi, both of which cost at least 7 credits for most regular runners to break. That is no small change, and when you force the runner to encounter these expensive ice multiple times, Mambat City Grid suddenly becomes a fearsome force multiplier to deal with. So yeah, that's Mambat City Grid for you. Now, one big counter that Mambat City Grid used to have was Ice Destruction. Parasite used to be very good against Mambat City Grid, or not so much the grid itself, but the ice. As runners keep throwing parasites on your Grail Ice and weakening your remote, it becomes harder and harder to sustain your Mambat City Grid, because if you want a good Mambat City Grid fire, as you saw in the example, you want to have at least 3 ice protecting your remote to have to get lots of mileage out of your on-encounter effects. However, Parasites reduces the number of ice on your remote, and having to replenish your ice by paying at least 2 credits to install a piece of ice from your hand as the outermost piece of ice is very, very taxing for you. Oftentimes it's not worth it. But now with Parasite gone, with less ice destruction in the mix, Mambat City Grid becomes more playable. So all these make Mambat City Grid more powerful than it ever was, and it's my motivation for playing it. Here's my deck list, and the first thing you'll notice is that I'm not playing the standard Jinteki Glacier ID, which is Egg Infusion. Ever since Egg Infusion came out, Polana has just been shoved to one side because it was basically inferior to Egg Infusion. Egg Infusion had 2 more influence, it had a better ability that is more reliable at keeping runners out of remotes. It's just so dang good. So yeah, that begs the question, why am I switching back to Polana here? Well, firstly, as you'll notice, Egg Infusion doesn't actually synergize during Mumbat grid runs because you every time the runner's encountering your ice during a Mumbat grid run, it's not unres. It's the same piece of res ice that you're making them encounter. So Egg Infusion will never trigger. You are not going to get mileage out of your ID on those critical runs. Secondly, the economy is a big issue. I noticed very quickly when assembling the ice that the average cost of the ice was super high, more than 5 credits. That is basically comparable to HB. And while all HB Glacier decks used to have powerful economy in ETF, you need something that rivals that on Jinteki's side because these ice are way too expensive for your burst economy to handle. A Chiyashi, for example, costs you a celebrity gift and an IPO, 2 of your 9 economy cards to res. Can you afford it? I didn't think so. Not to mention that Mumbat City Grid actually costs 3 credits to res. That is significant. Lastly, you also don't want to dip below 2 credits. You need to be able to play side games to defend your server with Marcus Batty to defend your future perfects. These are not negligible factors, and this is why I chose to play Polana. Surprisingly, that coincides with Sergey, the Russian Nationals winner's thoughts. They also made a Polana deck based on Mumbat City Grid, and here it is. Let's analyze the similarities and differences. The most glaring difference you can see is the restricted card. I'm running Obokata. He's running Global Food. Now, this is one area where I think I made the slightly better choice. Global Food is not that good nowadays, with more and more runners relying on cards like Mad Dash to make up the 7th agenda point. Global Food just doesn't look that good anymore. And besides, you're already running a lot of net damage ice in Merlin, DNA Tracker, and Komainu. It makes perfect sense to run Obokata as well. Force the runner to break these net damage ice. They can't just absorb all the net damage and expect to get through to steal the agenda. Obokata defends itself and it's very powerful. The one reason I can understand Global Food being used above Obokata is perhaps if Sergey was expecting a lot of film critic in the Russian meta, in which case obviously Obokata wouldn't do anything then. So yes, could be a meta call. Otherwise, I would prefer the Obokata. Also saves me 3 influence, which as you'll see soon, I'm spending elsewhere. Yes, as many differences as we might have, I'd like to say that this is a similarity that we agreed on. Not exactly. I initially had 3 Mumbat City Grids in my deck, and then when I had a look at Sergey's deck, I realized, wait, you don't need 3 Mumbat City Grids. Firstly, you cannot stack it in the same server like Marcus Batty. And secondly, you don't need Mumbat City Grid until mid to late game. Even if you draw one early, it's a dead card because it's basically useless unless you have a 2 deep remote. Even with a 2 deep remote, it's not that good. So yes, 2 Mumbat City Grid is definitely correct. And this is an idea that I completely stole from Sergey. So that was a very good call on Sergey's part. Now we move on to another similarity, striking similarity here. We both settle on scarcity in this deck, even though there's no obvious synergy. Scarcity is just a very powerful card right now that basically hoses anyone that's not running Magnum Opus. And yeah, if they're running Film Critic, they are going to be slowed down by Scarcity as well. So that is an additional bonus. I really did want 3 copies of Scarcity in my deck, but I just couldn't afford the deck space. In my initial iterations, it had 3, I just had to cut 1. But this is definitely a very good shout. And I think we both saw the power in having not just Scarcity, but also a counter current in case the runner decides to play something like E-Strike to turn off our economy ID. What else do we have? We also had the similar idea of playing 1 Komainu. Obviously, it synergizes with Mumbat City Grid, but you don't want to play more than 1 copy of it because it is not the cheapest ice to res, and not to mention that Komainu is, yeah, you don't really want more than 1 copy of it out on the board anyway. Especially since in my deck it only really protects the Obokata. One handy trick you can do against Komainu is to take all the net damage, go down to 0 cards in hand, and then rerun the server again and blank Komainu basically. So yeah, keep that in mind. Komainu might not be as powerful as you might imagine. I would much prefer having the Grill Ice or some sort of end run like Chiyashi. Now, Excalibur, again, another similarity between our decks. We both saw the power in Excalibur. It's one of the Grill Ice, so no reason not to have one. Personally, I feel that one copy is enough. The second copy of Excalibur is basically a dead copy, unlike in Egg Infusion where you can use it as Egg Infusion fodder. In this deck, the second copy of Excalibur is basically dead. With proper play, you shouldn't need to have one in hand and one installed. You should know where to place your Excalibur correctly and perhaps get a Marcus Petty Fire with it. I think one is perfectly fine. You won't need two copies most games. Now, the differences. We both have some sort of recursion in our deck. But this actually tells you a very glaring difference between both our decks, and that is the, overall aim, the overall arc that we are aiming for in our games. Sergey seems to be aiming for a slower deck with preemptive action, which takes more time to take effect. Preemptive action doesn't really happen immediately. You have to wait a couple of turns before the cards that you shuffle in your deck can be seen again. I get that it probably is also a pseudo Jackson backup, but I wouldn't rely on preemptive action and dump my agendas in the bin. That seems very risky. Why not just push them out instead? Instead, in my build, I'm going for a much faster deck. One that can easily push agendas out very quickly, and with the economy support from the 9 burst economy cards plus Perlana's ID ability, close out the game before the runner gets set up. And Archive Memories can be really helpful here if I need to use it to recur, say, more economy cards, or perhaps recur Scarcity to slow the runner down further. So Archive Memories is just a very flexible 2 influence slot that allows me to, rebuild my stuff. In case they trash my ice, well, Archive Memories gets them back. In case they trash my Marcus Petty, well, I can recur it with my Archive Memories. So yeah, just a very flexible card that I think works much better in the short term than in the long term, where preemptive action might be better. Also worth noting that I believe Sergey would probably prefer to play Archive Mems as well, but their influence was tied up in Global Food, which is another reason why I prefer the Obo Carter. Another point you can see where my deck is much faster than Sergey's is with these cards here. Sergey only runs one fast track, and fast track is definitely essential because in most Jinteki Glacier decks, this is not an exception. You want to score the Nisei. The other agendas are useless. They don't offer you anything. You want to chain Niseis and finish off with your 5-3 agenda. Fast track gets you there. Fast track gets you the first 2 Niseis you need. And you really want 2 copies of fast track. I can live with 1 copy or even 0 copies of fast track if you are going for the 9 agenda suite with 6 useful agendas, i.e. corporate sales team and 3 corporate sales team, 3 Niseis. But when you only have 3 scoreable agendas in your deck, you need to see them ASAP, which is why I'm running 2 fast tracks. And to further that, I'm even running 3 Perlana Agroplexes to draw me those Niseis. Now, as some of you might know from conversations with me, I am the biggest I'm the biggest opponent of Agroplex. I think it's a rubbish card, and well, it's a good card for the runner. As the Corp, you really shouldn't be playing this. This is an effect that the runner wants to have, not the Corp. But why am I playing it now? Well, I still don't think it's the best card, but because Restructure has been removed from the card pool, and I do want me some extra tempo, some way to gain money quicker or gain cards quicker, and without influence to spend, Perlana Agroplex was the next on the hit list. It was either that or Medical Research Fundraiser, both of which helped the runner as well. In the end, I decided to go for Agroplex because the extra cards might lead to a swifter victory, and that could be absolutely crucial if I'm trying to rush out against the runner. With runners being pretty good in the late game, this is not the worst thing to have, but it could definitely be a liability. I also like the fact that it synergizes extremely well with the Grail Ice, because the thing with Grail Ice is that they are typically not that good in the early game because you haven't drawn enough of them. You need at least 2 copies of Grail Ice in your hand, plus another one or ideally 2 of them installed somewhere on the board. Agroplex draws you into those ice, which makes Agroplex a lot more tempting in my build. You run 3 copies of it because why wouldn't you? And you do want to trash your Agroplex as soon as you want to start scoring, because you don't want to be leaving it on for the runner to gain tempo against you while you're scoring. So there you go. A very lengthy discussion on the builds. It's time to get into the game. Today we are up against Valencia. My opening hand, 2 dead Mumbat City grids and just 1 piece of ice that doesn't even end the run. That's a mulligan. Even though there were no agendas, I think we could do better. And sure enough, I mulligan into a pretty nuts hand. A hand that I can celebrity gift safely with no agendas. And then a threatening ice on R&D. Doesn't just end the run, it threatens net damage. They can't afford to run it. So Komainu protects that safely. I know I want to keep the Grail Ice in hand because that will fortify my remote and make HQ pretty scary to run. I also have 2 IPOs which will give me very good money over the course of the next few turns. My opponent sets up slowly with a data folding and shows they're on Hernando Cortez. So this is a credit denial deck. I need to start respecting the Lamprey. Start respecting the Xanadu. Rebirth into Reina. Anything is possible. Better be on high alert. I do want to ice up HQ, but then with my first click draw, I saw the Agroplex, and that changes all my plans because this turn I initially intended to install 1 card and then play IPO, preferably ice on HQ. But the Agroplex meant that I needed to get it going ASAP. So the Agroplex goes in the remote, and I'll get the draw going as the turns go by. Now my opponent drops a Liberator account, they're pretty poor, that's good. This Agroplex will give me money, give them cards that they probably can't afford to install. Let's see. We draw a Nisei Mark II. Big card. Do we want to score that this turn? I can drop Merlin, drop Nisei, advance. Very tempting. Mouse hovering over the Nisei, but I chose to IPO instead. 2 reasons. Firstly, I do want an extra tick off the Agroplex. The more draw the better, because after scoring this Nisei, I have nothing else to do. Second important thing, I don't think my opponent's going to run HQ here. So yeah, turns out they did not run, that's good. But they played a system outage. That sneaky cheeky git. Oh, system outage. What does that do? That makes me lose a credit when I draw an extra card with Palana. You son of a boop. Yeah, so that basically neuters my ID ability with the Agroplex. So this was basically an FO message to Agroplex: get the hell out of here. I don't welcome you here. If you're gonna draw a card, I'm gonna draw a card too. I don't want that. Agroplex goes out, Nisei goes in, we are gonna score that thing. And of course, my opponent can't afford to run it. They don't have all their breakers in the bin. They have to respect that there could be potentially double Merlin in my hand waiting to snipe them. So I do score the Nisei here, getting rid of the system outage. Not that it really matters, because at this point, the win is in my hand. I don't need to draw any more cards to win. All I need to do is to jam advance the Nisei and then play IPO here, which is what I was about to do until I drew into Mumbat City Grid. Pretty tempting here. Let's go for it. Get an upgrade in there. Not only is it scary to look at, it also deters the runner from running. Even though Mumbat City Grid doesn't do all that much at this point, it's only a 2 deep ice remote. The main thing here is that it masquerades as a Marcus Betty, making it very difficult for my opponent to challenge. Do they really want to get hit by a Marcus Betty plus a Nisei Mark II token? They can't challenge it. Instead, they're going to fork me, run HQ. Do you want to rest the Merlin for 6 credits? Pretty expensive. I chose to. For the simple reason that it's going to tax my opponent out, making it even harder for them to bring themselves to run the remote. Also, trying to feign the fact that I might have a Galahad on the remote, which only costs 2 to res. So, another big important reason why I rest the Merlin here was because I knew that Maw was going to trigger. So, Maw actually trashed my Galahad from my hand, which was pretty bad. I don't actually have any hard enderruns on the remote now. That's quite scary. My opponent follows it up with system outage. Ugh. Didn't want to see that. This is a very tough choice here. It's a Glacier deck. You never want to take the bad pub. And so I resisted. I paid the 5 credits here because I really did not want to take the bad pub, which would basically neuter the taxing nature of my Grail Eyes of my Mumbat City Grid remote. So yeah, they played 2 mining accidents. In fact, I couldn't pay 5 for the second one, so now I'm riddled with 2 bad publicity, 1 from Valencia, 1 from 1 mining accident, and I'm 5 credits down. I do, however, manage to score the Nisei uncontested, so my opponent, so now I'm 2 Nisei tokens up, but my opponent has their hands on my Mumbat City Grid. It gets trashed, and now they're rummaging through R&D. I'm only on 1 credit. They trash my fast track with more, and I see a Z 2.0, which was top deck of R&D. Z, huh? Haha. So the reason I spent 3 whole influence on Z 2.0 was for this one console. Maw is a menace and I want to get rid of it. Thankfully, my opponent did not maw my Z 2.0, so now this turn I get to drop the Z 2.0 on a server of my choice, making it incredibly taxing for my opponent to run that server. And I chose R&D. I also have a Marcus Batty here, but instead I chose to play the IPO because I needed the money way more than the Batty. Batty is not very useful if I don't have the money to protect it with Merlin and Lancelot. But I have a bigger problem right now. The Merlin and Lancelot are not looking very tantalizing themselves. What am I to do with them? I don't have any backup Grail Ice left in my hand. Maw is an incredible hard counter to Grail Ice, and I'm suffering right now. With a 0 card hand, they know that they can run the Grail Ice with pretty much with impunity. So I try to fill up my hand, drawing in. I see a fast track. That's not very useful here. I can't fast track an agenda and install it this turn, hoping to score it next turn. I could do that with Philotic, but that doesn't win me the game, so that's out of the question. I ponder over my options here, and there's not much I can do when my hand is so limited. Seems like the best move might actually just be hedge fund and take a credit. I do badly need these credits after all. I probably want to make a Tower of Ice on the remote, seeing that the ice is not going to do much in my hand if I draw a Grail Ice. So we'll do that for now. And as you can see, even though I seem to be in a very strong board state, 4 agenda points up and with 2 Nisei counters, I'm actually quite stuck in a rut. Without any hard end runs on the remote, I'm going to find it very difficult to push out my last agenda. Again, I spend my first click drawing, I see a bunch of upgrades. Chrysium's not going to matter in this matchup. Mumbat City Grid might, so I'm going to drop it in the remote and end my turn, drawing my click for the last turn. My intention here is to fill my hand with lots of cards so that I can hopefully get the Grail Ice going back again. My opponent challenges the remote, thinking it might be a Philotic or wanting to empty my server of defensive upgrades. I res the Merlin here. I do not show the Merlin in my hand just yet. I pretend, oh, you got all my Grail Ice, they're all in the bin. I do not want to show it to them in my hand because I fear they will then maw it from my hand, knowing that it's there. So I'm just going to show them the Merlin, and then, or rather res the Merlin, and then res the Lancelot here. Bringing me down a lot of credits. Hernando Cortez is active here, so I actually lose 2 credits from all this resing because I was above 10 credits both times. Note that, yeah, Hernando Cortez does not fire on the additional subroutines on these ice. Because they are added only after the res. So they both only have 1 subroutine at the time of res. They cost 1 extra to res with Hernando Cortez active. So my opponent is slowly but surely sapping away at my credit pool thanks to Hernando Cortez, and now I'm down to 7 credits. They chose not to trash the MCG in the remote, giving me a more trigger and trashing my Chrysium Grid. I draw twice, or rather draw once. The mandatory draw is Celebrity Gift, which is obviously a dead card given my hand size, and I see a Batty. Time to play the Batty. Which server? Probably the remote. If I want to win this game, I need the Batty on the remote. R&D is pretty secure anyway, given that they don't seem interested in running it at all. My opponent rebuffs. Wonder what they're rebuffing into. It's Omar. Omar goes for an R&D run. Yeah, bypassing my ice and stealing my 3rd Nisei. Rude. Well, not the worst loss, but not the best either. Now, here comes the magic moment. Mandatory draw. Obokata. They stole a Nisei but gave me an Obokata. I'm gonna take that. Drop double advance. Jam double advance. Here we go. This is game either for me or for you. While they are not on match point, if they steal this agenda, it may as well be game over for me. So, let's see how this works out. My hopes are that the Marcus Batty in the remote will trigger the 2 net damage on Merlin and prevent them from stealing the Obokata here. Remember, I don't have any hard end runs on the remote. Just the 2 net damage from the Merlin. I'm banking on that to win me the game. So my opponent first click forks my remote, and I use the Nisei token just as they were about to encounter the Lancelot. Obviously, I'm not going to let them trash my Lancelot here. The Nisei token is a perfect counter against Cutlery, although I was a bit sad I had to expend it early. So, second run, they make a regular run on the remote, breaking Merlin with Black Orchestra, and as they get the MK Ultra out, here I show them the Merlin in my hand. That was a mistake. If they get the MK Ultra out, it means they do intend to break the Lancelot, and I shouldn't have reviewed this information. But break it they do nonetheless, and now at the base of the server, I fire the second Nisei token to end the run. They still don't know what my mystery upgrade on server 1 is. I'm trying to keep it a secret for as long as possible, so I prefer to expend the Nisei token before firing the Batty. In hindsight, this might have been a mistake. If I fire the Batty here and deal the 2 net damage, it may have been a better play after all, retaining my Nisei token in the event that they do get to steal this Obokata. So they run here one last time after clicking for a credit, and they use the hunting grounds to prevent me from adding the 2 net damage subroutine to Lancelot. This allows them to get through Lancelot without paying for MK Ultra. They do still get the program trash, but that's irrelevant because now they're at the base of the server and are about to steal my Obokata when I res the Batty, play the side game, bid 2, win, 2 net damage. They are now on 2 cards in hand with no clicks to spare. They can't steal this Obokata. I have 4 credits left and I can score it for a very, very nail-biting finish. That was a 2 in 3 chance of me winning. 1 in 3 chance of it all going down the drain. If you had any doubts between the global food versus Obokata choice for this deck, I think this game pretty convincingly tells you that Obokata is simply the nuts. Who needs end the run when you can deal 2 net damage and effectively replicate that effect? It's amazing. Well, this Pelana deck is pretty fun to play, giving you an out just like that. It wasn't technically a flatline, but, well, they lost on cards anyway. Now, this Pelana deck, as you notice, is actually lightning fast. I scored my second Nisei on turn 7. I only needed 3 more turns after that to score out. Turn 8 would have been spent getting money and playing fast track for Obokata. Turn 9 would have been install double advance Obokata. Turn 10, win with Obokata. I wasn't able to carry this out, however, because of the massive amount of disruption that my opponent placed on me. And good on my opponent. If they're playing Anarch, they better be disrupting my gameplay. It was super disruptive and probably actually one of the worst matchups for my deck. Mining Accident was pretty clutch. I did not see the second Mining Accident coming. It didn't matter anyway. They basically made runs a lot cheaper. My opponent was actually able to get 3 runs into my remote at the end of the game. And I only managed to stop them because I had 2 Nisei tokens and won the Batty side game. The 2 bad pub really stacked up when it came to running the remote there. And the -5 credits on the other Mining Accident also was a huge tempo hit because I had an IPO in hand and that put me out of IPO range, forcing me to click for a credit a couple of times, which basically was losing 2 clicks worth of tempo because all I needed was to play the IPO to get up to 13 credits. From then on, I didn't need any more credits. I could probably just win with those credits. More was the one biggest nuisance that I had to deal with this deck. I can't stress enough how disruptive it is to lose all the Grail Eyes from your hand. It severely weakens your Grail plan and more importantly your Mambat City Grid plan, because you're not going to be able to replicate subroutines if you don't have Grail Eyes in hand. This was why I was not able to exhibit Mambat City Grid at its fullest potential this game. In fact, that I didn't even res at all this game because it was useless against Maw. In conjunction with Spoon, it meant that my opponent always had a Maw trigger every single turn. I was destined to be on 0 cards every single turn, and Spooning HQ meant that I couldn't keep an Obokata in hand for even one turn, and that was quite important because fast track is fiddly that way. It's very easy to fast track for Nisei and then install Nisei Advance, but for a 5-3 agenda, you can't do that. Either the agenda must stay in your hand for 1 turn, or stay in the remote for 2 turns, both of which are really bad against an Anarch that is very aggressive. So yeah, all in all, it delayed me so long. A turn 10 win ended up being a turn 14 close shave, but eke it out I did, and that was a pretty nail-biting game that I hope you all enjoyed as much as I did. I think my opponent was favoured there, but I got really lucky with my draw. Drew Marcus Batty on turn 12, and immediately following that, turn 13, top deck the Obokata I needed. If the agendas had been the other way around, if my opponent stole the Obokata on the Omar run, and I top decked the Nisei instead, it could have been a different outcome. I would still have to play on for my 7th agenda point. Very interesting game. Thanks for watching, and happy net running. More spin. Goodbye.